Okay, as promised, a little trig video for you guys doing the GCSE foundation. And the first thing I want to say to you is you can forget the sine and cosine rule. You do not need to know them at your level. You need to know the right angle triangle, SOHCAHTOA, and that's it. Okay, so what do I mean by that SOHCAHTOA, right angle triangles? What am I talking about? Well, basically, the formulas you are going to be using only work on right angle triangles. And a good way to remember it is this SOHCAHTOA business. So if you look at the formulas on the bottom of the page, you've got sine theta is opposite over hypotenuse, SOH. That's where the SOH comes from. Cos is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tan is opposite over adjacent. So SOHCAHTOA kind of makes sense where they're coming from. What is all this adjacent, opposite, hypotenuse business? Let's talk about triangles in general. The right angle triangle's longest side is called the hypotenuse. Okay, some Greek is a Greek word, I think. Yeah, it's a Greek word. In terms of the other two, opposite and adjacent, they're English words, and they come from looking at the angle, not the right angle, whatever angle happens to be in the question. I've represented them both with theta, some really badly drawn thetas to be fair, but you can see which angle I'm talking about. And the side that's opposite the angle, guess what? It's called the opposite. The one that's next to it is called the adjacent. Now, adjacent in English just means next to. So if I'm sitting adjacent to you, we're next to each other. Yeah? In the same way, the angle and the side that are next to each other, the side is referred to as the adjacent. Okay? And labeling these things is incredibly important because they tell you which formula to use. That's something we're going to see in just a moment. Okay? So if you see in the middle, we've got two examples. The angle's labeled, and we define the three sides. Well, the hypotenuse is just the hypotenuse, but the other two sides are defined in terms of where they are thinking in terms of the angle. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. We're now going to have a look at a couple of questions. This is necessarily quite a brief video. This is something I suspect people will want support with, so don't hesitate to ask. Okay. Okay, right here. We've got two questions here. One is the one you're probably more familiar with. Is when we find the side. First thing to do is label, and you see I've done that by putting O and H in brackets. So we've got the angle, we've got an opposite, we've got the hypotenuse, so we're going to use SOH because we're looking for an O and we've got a H. Adjacent doesn't appear in any part of this question, so we cannot use either cos or tan. If we plug that into the formula, we know that our angle is 30, so sine 30 is something, which is what we're looking for, divided by 10. If you do sine 30 in a calculator and you do it in degrees, you get a half. And then we've got a half is something over 10. You times both sides by 10. A half times 10 is 5. And that's where that comes from. So the length of that side is 5. Sides are relatively easy. Angles are slightly harder because we have to use something called tan minus... Well, it's not called tan minus 1. Really, it's called arctan. But tan minus 1 is probably what you've heard it referred to at GCSE. So what have we got here? We've got opposite and adjacent, so it's tan this time. Yeah? There's no sine. I'm sorry, there's no hypotenuse, so neither sine nor cos can be played. So tan of this angle is something over something, or 6 over 6 in this case. We can't just use tan here. We have to use tan minus 1, and that's something you can acquire by doing shift and tan on your calculator. That tan minus 1, as I said, proper name is arctan. You do tan minus 1, 6 over 6, and it will give you the angle. Okay? Now, that's a little bit more complicated. It's definitely something you want to try practicing. So if you look at some of the exam papers I've kind of sent to you, you will find some questions where you can practice those ones. Okay, I hope that makes sense, and that's me done here, I think.